All right, everybody, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today for our open forum for our strategic plan. We're very excited about the opportunity to be able to share it with each and every one of you, as well as those who will be watching it through the live stream. So hopefully this will be informative for you. We are having this because we really want and value your feedback. So we look forward to getting your impressions, hearing what you think, but most importantly, getting some feedback as we put this into a final version later on here in the summer. A couple of things before I start. We've been working on this draft for the better part of about a year, trying to get it to the point where we were ready to go around and see different groups. And so for the past 4 to 6 weeks, we've gone around and talked to a number of different groups, mostly on campus, from Student Athlete Advisory Committee to Faculty Senate to P&S Council to Student Government and a lot of other groups just introducing the plan. But we felt like it was important that we had a public open forum so anybody who was interested in coming to hear more about it would have an opportunity to be able to do it, or obviously anybody who was able to get to a computer and watch it this evening would have a chance to get feedback, because it's really important to us that we have that feedback so that we can get this into a format that we feel like everybody will be proud of. And so as we go through the draft, you'll certainly have plenty of opportunity to be able to look and see what we're planning on doing in a number of different areas. But whether you offer your feedback this evening or you offer it at a different time, or you contact me by phone or by email or whatever works for you, I know that that feedback is not only really wanted, but it's ultimately needed to get us to the spot that we want to be in. From our standpoint, we don't believe, and maybe some of you here can correct us, we don't believe that UNI Athletics has had a strategic plan before. Obviously, we've accomplished a number of things and really achieved a number of big goals, but we think this may be the first time that we've actually put those goals out on paper. And just based on what I believe and our leadership team believes, we really feel like it's important to put things down on paper and then hold yourself accountable for the things that you said you were planning to do. So from our standpoint, we're being intentional about being both transparent and ambitious in what we're trying to do. So as you look through some of these things, you may see some goals that you think, whoa, so they're going to try to go out and do that. And yes, we definitely are. We're going to try to do everything that we can to move the department forward in a significant way, give our coaches the resources that they need to have success, and make sure that our student athletes have a great experience. So I know that we were pretty intentional about trying to push the envelope forward, and we're excited about getting this into a format and then getting started with working toward these goals. From a timing standpoint, we will look to have, all of our feedback gathered within the next 2 or 3 weeks from all the different meetings that we've had. Then we will go through the process of trying to sift through it and figure out what changes we may want to make, and then ultimately introduce the final version at some point later on here this summer. So you can be on the lookout for that at the appropriate time. Having said that, the plan is divided into a few different sections: a vision statement, a mission statement, our core values, our goals, and then the metrics that we want to use to measure those particular goals. So we'll go through each one of those at the end. I know there's a microphone here, so anybody who has questions can come to the mic and ask it so that everybody here, as well as those who are watching online, can kind of hear. And we'll just keep going until we get through all the questions that everybody has. Everybody good? Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start with our vision statement. And as many of you know, when you're talking about a vision statement, you're talking about something that's a reflection of where you would ultimately like to go. It's not a reflection of where your department is right now, but it's a reflection that if you're looking to the year 2023, 5 years from now, what do you want to be able to say about your department? And so ours indicates, with an emphasis on the student-athlete experience, UNI Athletics will achieve unprecedented success in academics, competition, and all of its endeavors. So from our standpoint, there are a couple of things that I would point out. Number one, we were intentional about putting an emphasis on the student-athlete experience up front, because we feel like that is more than anything what defines our department. We want to make sure that our student-athletes have a great experience. And then the second thing, the idea of achieving unprecedented success. That seems like a big word. It seems like a big goal, something that you're trying to do that hadn't been done before, having a level of success that hadn't been had before. And when you look across the board at the success that we've had over a number of years, over a number of sports, it's fairly ambitious to say we want to do things that we hadn't done before from a sports standpoint, academically, facility-wise, financially, but that's our goal. We want to really have unprecedented success so that in all ways we feel that we've moved the department forward. And so we wanted to be really clear that that's the direction that we want to head in with our vision and make that a part of everything that we do. Mission, and I'm sure some of you in the back may not be able to see this, but ultimately it says UNI Athletics provides opportunities for student athletes through quality learning experiences and competition. We take pride in our role as a unifying force for our campus and community. We operate with integrity, serve as leaders in diversity and inclusion, are innovative with our resources, and commit ourselves to the student-athlete experience. So as I said, the mission is supposed to be a reflection of what you feel like your department reflects right now. And for us, opportunities for student-athletes through learning experiences and competition, taking pride in our role as a unifying force, operating with integrity, being leaders in diversity and inclusion, innovative with resources, and committing ourselves to the student-athlete experience. We felt like and feel like those are the things that define who we are today and why we exist and the things that we want to try to accomplish with what we do each and every day and the decisions that we make. So then you move into core values, first of which is academic excellence, ensuring that athletics is a model department for promoting and achieving a high level of academic success for its student athletes. We've listed the core values alphabetically, but ultimately the first one is always going to be first for us. The idea that we want our student athletes to be able to come in, receive an education, receive a degree, and be prepared for life after they leave the university. That's always going to be critical. It's always going to be at the top of the list. As a department, we are supposed to be supporting the academic mission of the university. And so for us, academic excellence is a non-negotiable for us. And that's the way we see all of our core values as being our non-negotiables. Yes, sir.
Are you going to try to put a metric with that?
Yes, we are. We'll get to the metrics once we go through the core values.
Well, I didn't see that.
Okay. Yep, we'll go through that. Next, community engagement. We're a part of the community and want to engage in building meaningful relationships. So as an athletics department, it's easy to be separated from the rest of campus. It's easy to stand off from the rest of the community. That's not our goal. Our goal is to be a part of the community, to recognize that at UNI, the culture is about having people know us, know our coaches, know our staff, our administrators, our student athletes. It's about getting out and serving the community. It's about doing things and putting forth initiatives that will help to make the community a better place. So that's a non-negotiable for us. We want to be actively engaged in the community. Competitive excellence, our teams will strive to compete for and win individual and team conference and national championships. We want to be the very best that we can be competitively. Whether you've come in basketball or you've come in softball, you come in football, all of our student athletes have a desire to be the best that they can be individually and with their team. So we want to set the goal high from a competitive excellence standpoint. Diversity and inclusion, we will provide a safe and inclusive environment, respecting differences and encouraging social change. We want all of our coaches, all of our staff members, all of our student athletes, everyone that's associated with UNI Athletics to understand that regardless of your background, regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, whatever the case may be, that UNI Athletics is a place where we respect all differences. We should respect everyone. We feel that each person and the diversity that they bring to the table makes us a stronger department, and we really want to encourage those types of differences because we feel that the more diverse we are, the better we're going to be as a department. We're going to provide and really be able to position ourselves to be able to respond to a number of different viewpoints, and that's something that we feel is very important. Financial accountability, we will use the funds that are invested in our program in a responsible and productive manner. We feel like each one of you are ultimately an investor in UNI athletics, and it's our responsibility to take those funds and to reinvest them back into our department and specifically back into the experience of our student athletes. So financial accountability is important. Integrity, we'll do the right things consistently on campus and in the community and model behavior that sets an example. That starts with me, it starts with our senior staff, our head coaches, all of our staff members, and goes to our student athletes. Doing the right things all the time, modeling behavior that our student athletes can really see and understand that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, a right way and a wrong way to be able to approach situations. So that's a core value for us. And then finally, student athlete experience. As we've talked about, we commit to providing the opportunity for each of our student athletes to have a successful and transformative experience during their time on our campus. So those are our core values. So you move from there and you start to talk about goals. And this is where we start to talk about what do we want to achieve in the next 5 years and what are the metrics that we're going to use to be able to show those things. So first up, academic excellence, ensuring that athletics is a model department in achieving a high level of academic success. So how do we want to measure that? First, annually achieve a federal graduation rate that's higher than the rate of the student body. And some of you may not be able to see the chart from here, but basically it shows the rate for the student body and the rate for student athletes from 2013 to 2017. So you can see the occasions where we've had a higher rate than the rate of the student body, including in 2017 where we had a 66% rate compared to the student body of 65. In 2016, we were both tied at 68. In 2015, we were higher at 74% to 64%. And then in the 2 years, 2014 and 13, the student body had a higher rate than student athletes. So annually, we want to be in a spot where we have a higher graduation rate as student athletes than the student body. Second metric, achieve a student athlete grade point average that's above a 3.0 and higher than the student body each semester. This is an area where we've actually had a great deal of success. As a matter of fact, for 16 consecutive semesters, we've achieved this goal. Student athletes have a higher GPA than the rate of the student body. So one of the things that we've actually considered is whether or not we should make this goal higher. Should we make the goal a 3.0 or it should be a 3.1? A 3.2? Is there a different way that we can measure what we want to do from a GPA standpoint? But for purposes of presenting a draft, we decided to leave it at a 3.0 and see what kind of feedback we would ultimately get. So we know it's important that we have a GPA goal, but as far as exactly what it's going to say, that's certainly something that we're open to feedback on. Goal 3, annually achieve a federal graduation rate within the minority student athlete population that's greater than that of the minority student body. This is one where we've had a lot more variance, and this is one where we haven't done as well. This is one where we need to do a better job. If you look at the number from 2013, we were at 55%. Then in 2014, it dropped to 25, up to 56, down to 35, and down to 25. Whereas the student body has been 45, 42, 50, 43, and then up to 57. So we've been above the rate of the student body 2 out of those 5 years. Now, one of the things that we're considering with this particular number is that when you look at the federal graduation rate with minority student athletes, it's a measurement of minority student athletes who are on scholarship who enroll in any given year. And so sometimes that number can actually be in single digits. And so because of that, you can get the variance in the numbers that you will see. The other thing that we've talked about as a department is that because we are only looking at scholarship student athletes, you're going to get maybe not an apples to apples comparison if you're looking at the entire minority student body versus only scholarship minority student athletes. So one of the things we're considering is maybe not using the federal graduation rate, but coming up with our own graduation rate that looks at all minority student athletes versus the entire minority student body. So we feel like we're getting an apples to apples comparison and see where those numbers take us. But regardless of how you slice it, we want to make sure that those numbers are where they're supposed to be and that we achieve the goal in that particular area. And then goal 4, annually achieve an overall APR score of 985. You can see where we've been from 2012-13 up to 2016-17. Some of you may know what the APR is, some of you may not. The APR started about 12 years ago as an academic metric, and it basically measures whether or not your student athletes are being retained from one semester to the next and whether or not they are maintaining their eligibility from one semester to the next. So let's say you're a freshman football player, you enroll in the fall of 2018. When the spring of 2019 comes in, we're going to look at whether or not you were retained or whether or not you're enrolled in school in spring of 2019 and whether or not you've maintained your eligibility. If so, you're assigned 2 points. You get 2 out of 2 possible points. You have a chance to be able to do that again after the spring semester and earn 2 points. So ultimately, all of our student athletes are measured in that way. And once you have the total number of points for your student athletes is divided by the total number of points possible. So the highest score that you can make on this is 1,000. And so the numbers are done by sport. So each one of our sports, when you'll hear at some point during the year that from an APR, we had 5 teams that were in the top 10% of their respective sport with APR, that's what that's ultimately talking about. Each of our sports have an APR, but then we have an overall institutional APR. So we chose a 985 number because within a couple of years, the NCAA is going to be introducing a new distribution of money based on achievement of academic goals. It's the first time that they've ever done this. And one of the goals that you have to achieve in order to be able to receive that allotment of money is to have an APR score of 985. The other 2 goals that you can achieve to possibly get that money is to have a GSR institutionally of 90% or to have a federal graduation rate that's 13% higher than the rate of your student body. So for us, we felt like the APR was a number that we had the best chance of being able to achieve year in and year out. So we want to make sure that we're hitting that target, although we'd love for that number to be 1,000 institutionally for all of our sports across the board. We want to make sure that it's a minimum of 985 because that's a reflection that our student athletes are doing a good job of meeting the eligibility requirements. We're not losing students to transfers. We're not losing students ultimately who are flunking out of school, and that we're going to be in a position to be able to receive that money over a period of time. So those are the goals for academic excellence. Next is community engagement. Enhance engagement with the university community, the Cedar Valley, and our various constituents throughout Iowa and the United States. Number 1, student athletes will complete a minimum of 3,000 volunteer hours each academic year. So if you look at starting in 2012-13, we were around 2,200. All the way through 2016-17, we are just over 2,800. We want that number to be at least 3,000 each year based on the work that our student athletes are doing in the community. We feel like we can do that, that our student athletes will be active in a number of different things that will allow us to have an impact on the lives of people within the Cedar Valley. Secondly, increase TC's Kids Club membership to 200. Many of you are probably aware that the Kids Club is something that we revamped this year, setting one price and giving our students or giving our kids access to all of our ticketed sports with the exception of wrestling, and we excluded wrestling just because there's a capacity issue there. But the idea is to grow the next generation of Panther fans. If you're 15 or 16 or 17 years old, you probably already have an allegiance to a school within the state. But if you're the age of my son, who's 7 years old, then ultimately having something like this where you're coming to the games more regularly, where you're interacting with our student athletes, where you're getting gear, where you're having special access and opportunities to different things, that gives you a chance to be able to get more integrated into UNI athletics and hopefully build our fan base up with the very little kids up until the time that they become teenagers and they go to college, all of a sudden they're looking at UNI, they're looking at being a UNI student athlete, or they're just looking at coming to our games on a regular basis. And so we wanted to make this one of our goals. Goal 3, reach a cumulative of 6,000 fan interactions during the Panther Caravan. I think everybody knows we started that last year. During year 1, we had 981 fan interactions, and fan interactions just means how many people are coming to our events when we have them across the state, how many kids are we having a chance to interact with when we go to an elementary school or go to a middle school. So we want to make sure that over the next 5 years, we continue to grow the caravan and have a number of people who are coming out to those events. Varsity Club membership, that's a reflection of former student athletes and their involvement back with the university. We feel like if we're going to be reaching out to different groups, if we're reaching out to kids, if we're reaching out to fans, to season ticket holders, to community members, we have to reach out to the members of the Panther family who've been through the university, who participated, who are letter winners, and get them back re-engaged. So the Varsity Club is really about former student athletes, giving them a way to come back and financially support the department, but also hopefully getting them back on campus, having them around our current student athletes and making them understand that we always consider them to be a part of what we're doing, and we need their help as we continue to move the department forward. PSC membership in all 99 counties. This most recent year, we were in 85 of the 99 counties. We want to make sure that we're growing the membership of the PSC, and so we want to have a member in every county within the state of Iowa. And goal 6, increasing total student attendance at athletic events by 50% in each of our 5 ticketed sports. For us, getting student attendance up is a critical thing, and we feel that when we have more students at our events, we have better events. When we have more students at our events, we have a better home court or home field advantage. We want our students to be at the events. We know that the cost of coming to these events has already been covered within the student fees that they pay. And so we just feel that if we want the energy that we feel like our student athletes deserve, we need to have our students coming to these games on a regular basis. Now, with this goal and with every goal that we introduce, one thing I should say is that we're going to have people working behind the scenes within the athletics department to put together a plan on how we're going to achieve these things. The strategic plan is meant to be to give you a sense of what we want to accomplish, but the behind the scenes plan on how we're going to hit the GPA goal, or the behind the scenes plan on how we're going to hit the varsity club goal, or what we're doing from a student attendance standpoint, that's what we'll be charging our staff to put together individual plans on how we're going to make those things happen. But from a student attendance standpoint, you can see the numbers from football on down to wrestling, and how in many cases they've either varied or they've gone down over time. And we have to change that. We have to change that around and get that pointed in a positive direction. And so we felt like it was an important enough thing to make a part of our strategic plan. Brings you to competitive excellence, to be the best athletics program in the football championship subdivision among public universities. Goal 1, finish in the top 100 of the Learfield Sports Directors Cup. Have that finish be the best in the Missouri Valley Conference and in the top 10 among all public FCS universities. Some of you are probably familiar with the Learfield Directors Cup, some of you aren't. The Learfield Directors Cup is basically a measurement of all Division I institutions and I guess their commitment to comprehensive excellence throughout their program. And so it assigns points based on your ability to be able to earn your way to the NCAA tournament in each of your sports, and then ultimately the degree to which you advance through the tournament. So if you go to the NCAA tournament in women's basketball, you get a certain number of points. If you win a game, that number of points goes up, so on and so forth. Same thing with sports like wrestling and football and track. So if you're doing well in the Learfield Sports Directors Cup, it means that your teams have had good seasons, that they qualify for postseason play, and that ultimately they're winning games in the postseason. And so for us, we want to be in the top 100 schools within Division I in that particular standing, but we also want to make sure that among schools in the Missouri Valley Conference that we're first, and among public FCS universities that we're in the top 10. So if you look at the last time, and I don't know if it's been the only time that we've done it, but the last time was in 2015-16, where we were number 93 overall with 201 points. We were first in the MVC, and we were 7th among public schools within the FCS. So we want to be in a position to be able to accomplish that again. Then as you roll into Goal 2, win the Missouri Valley Conference All Sports Competition. So Learfield looks at all Division I schools, but this looks at just the 10 schools that are within the Valley. And it's an all sports competition that ultimately measures whether or not you are doing well in a number of different sports. You get points for where you finish, either based on the tournament, based on your regular season finish, and those points are assigned, and then you compete with the other schools within the conference. We have never won this competition. We've never finished better than second. We finished second last year, but we've never won the all sports competition. So when you talk about unprecedented success, this is an example of our desire to want to do things that we haven't done in the past. And then Goal 3, all teams finish in the top 3 of their conference standings. So you can look back to 2012-13, where we had 3 teams that achieved that goal, all the way up until last year, where we had 9 teams. So we're moving in the right direction. But we want to be in a spot where all of our teams are able to finish in the top 3 of their respective conference standings. Diversity and inclusion. Foster a culture that values diversity and promotes inclusion. Goal 1, bring the department into full compliance with all components of Title IX. You'll see the 3 boxes: participation, having to do with the number of undergraduate student athletes that you have, matching up with the number of undergraduate students on your campus based on gender. So we want to be able to meet that requirement. Secondly, scholarships has to do with the number of with how you're spending your scholarship money. So for instance, participation will say that if your undergraduate student population is 55%, then the population of your, let's say the undergraduate student population is 55% female, then your student athlete population needs to be 55% female. So those numbers need to match up. Scholarships say ultimately if your student athlete population is 55% female, then your scholarship money needs to be spent in a way that shows that 55% of it is spent on your female student athletes. So we need to make sure we're doing our part to meet the participation standard, the scholarship standard, and then the treatment, which is known as a laundry list, is basically a measurement of looking at access to academic services or to the training room or to travel and transportation or hotel accommodations, making sure that between your male and your female student athletes that they are both being treated equitably in all of those things. And so we want to make sure that we're paying attention to all of these areas and that between our male and our female student athletes that we're meeting the standard that's been set out by the Office of Civil Rights. Goal 2, develop a survey structure for department staff and student athletes designed to provide actual feedback on existing culture and climate. So giving our staff and our student athletes a chance to be able to talk about what their experience has been like and how we can improve the culture and climate of the department. Goal 3, implementing specific mechanisms to make sure that we enlarge the pool of job applicants to include all protected classes and ensure representation is maintained throughout the search process. So if we want to continue to have a diverse staff, then we have to be intentional about what we're doing when there are job positions that come open. And then Goal 4, attract and retain diverse student athletes, coaches, and staff who are integrated into the campus community. That takes you to facilities. Provide student athletes an opportunity to practice and compete in first-class facilities. First up, basketball multi-purpose facility. I'll show you a picture. So on the west side of the McLeod Center, the idea is to have a multi-purpose facility that will service not only our men's and women's basketball program, but also other areas within the department. So on the bottom level, there would be basketball courts for both the men's and women's teams. There'd be new locker rooms, new training room, new weight room. On level 2, there would be a new academic services office available for all student athletes. Right now, we don't have a true academic services home. We have a couple of offices and some computers, but that's it. We want to have a place that, whether it's from a functional standpoint and our student athletes using it, or from a recruiting standpoint, demonstrating to parents and prospective student athletes that we're making a commitment to academics, that we have a place for them to be able to go. On the other side of floor 2 will be new administrative offices. So where we're located right now in the dome would be vacated. We would move into this building, and it would allow our football staff, our football coaches who need better office space, to be able to move into the office that we're vacating. Then on level 3, let me go here, would be our coaches' offices for our men's and our women's basketball staff. And then this area here in the middle, this would ultimately be, we're calling it a revenue generating area, but it could be a pre-function space. It could be an area where we hold receptions, pre-game receptions. That would be an area that we can rent out for wedding receptions, or it could present a grand entrance also into the McLeod Center. Many people will say that when they come into McLeod now, they come in through one of the corner areas because there's not a true central entrance. Now the idea would be that people would be able to come in to the building, entering here, going up one flight of steps, and then passing through this area as being the grand entrance that would go into the McLeod Center. From our standpoint, one of the reasons that we feel like this is an important thing to do is that it has an impact on a number of different areas within our department. You can obviously see how men's and women's basketball get better from this, but then there's our volleyball program, where volleyball, with making this move, all of a sudden the McLeod Center court becomes a place that our volleyball program doesn't have to share with men's and women's basketball. So they are able to not have conflicts with being able to get onto the floor. Also, I mentioned that there'd be a new training room and a weight room in this building. Volleyball would have access to that space, so volleyball, men's and women's basketball would be using those facilities, and that would be less stress on our current weight room, which is in a WRC. I've talked about football. Football needs much better space for meetings and for their coaches' offices based on where they stand right now. So with the administrative office moving out of the dome into this facility, then all of a sudden football gets better office space and gets better meeting space, because where we're located right now, there are 3 meeting rooms as well as the offices there that they would be able to inhabit. Academically, the entire department gets better because we have an academic services true office space, a wing, a unit that we can recruit to, we can use in a number of different places or a number of different ways. So whether you're a wrestling prospective student athlete or tennis or soccer or softball, everybody has a chance to be able to see that, and everybody has a chance to be able to use it. Then ultimately, with men's and women's basketball moving into this building, offices along this wing would be vacated so we could move some of our other sports into these particular offices. So men's and women's basketball, volleyball, football, administratively, academically, and then with some other sports, there are 6 or 7 different areas that get an upgrade by being able to do a facility like this. And so that's why we wanted to make it a part of our plan. One of the things I should have said at the beginning, but I didn't, is that any of the facilities or any of the renovations or any of the things that we're talking about would all have to be funded privately. So we would be going out talking with donors, trying to get them to be interested in doing these things and coming up with the money to be able to help them happen. So ultimately, if we can't get the money, if we can't get it privately donated, then we wouldn't be able to move forward with these projects until we're in a position to be able to raise that money. Next, the football team meeting room. Right now, our football program does not have a place where they can all meet together. They don't have a team meeting room space. So we want to be able to create one for them, and we're looking at putting it on the south concourse of the Unidome. So you'll see a picture here just under the scoreboard on the south end. We would have this space be the team meeting room for the football program. In order to do this and to have the room be the adequate size that's necessary, you can't necessarily tell from the picture, but the stairwells would need to be widened. So those stairwells would need to be moved out in order to be able to put that room in that particular space. Also, on the back side of this room, there's still going to be enough space so that people can pass through on the concourse. So we didn't want to do this if it was going to make it to where you couldn't pass behind that room for our football games and other events within the dome. That was important for us. Also, if you look, this is going to give us the capability of being able to sell that space as a suite on game day. So if we have, 5 home games, then we'd have a chance to be able to sell this as a suite and be able to bring in revenue as a department. Ultimately, while it's one room, it's going to have a divider here that can be closed and give us an opportunity to separate the room into an offensive side and a defensive side. In the same way, we can have it be 2 suites instead of 1 and double the opportunity to be able to bring in revenue from something like that. But the biggest thing is that we need football to be able to have a space where they can come together and meet all together. And so this is the best location for us to be able to do it after looking at a number of different locations, both inside and outside of the dome. McLeod upgrades, there are several things that we want to do there, including replacing the playing surface. The playing surface now for basketball or for volleyball is at a point where it's worn enough to where it needs to be replaced. So we need to be able to replace that. This is just a mock-up of an example of what the court could look like once we go through with that process. We would like to be able to make this happen before the next volleyball, basketball season. So we're actively involved in fundraising to be able to make that happen. The same thing with the football team meeting room. We would like to be able to start that project at the conclusion of the upcoming football season. So these things are priorities for us based on football not having the space and based on basketball and volleyball needing a safe, reliable surface to be able to compete on. We want to redo some of our banners in there. I know everybody has seen the banners for Coach Robbie Fard and Eldon Miller. The idea is to change the shape of the banners so that they're bigger, the colors are a little bit more rich, and that instead of having a banner that captures everything that we did in one particular year, we're going to have categories of banners, whether it's conference championships or tournament championships or NIT appearances, and then have the years like it's laid out here in which we were able to achieve that particular goal. Some of the other things we want to look at, the alumni suite, there's some upgrades that we want to be able to do in this room. And then we'd love to be able to have a center hung video board within the McLeod Center. So those are things that we're going to be investigating over the next 5 years. Outdoor turf field. So the idea here is, with us having what seems to be about 6 months of winter most years, we don't have a place outside for our teams to be able to go and practice on a reliable surface. When they're going outside at this time of the year, like with football, if the dome isn't available because we're having a concert or we're hosting some other type of event, they don't have the ability to be able to go outside because the grass field is just not going to be in a position to where it'll hold up based on the fact that it either have snow on it or it's recently had snow and there's still a lot of moisture. So we would like to have an outdoor lighted turf field, whether it's football or soccer or other sports that need to be able to use it, to where if you're in a position where it's spring practice and during the spring we're going to be having events that are going to happen in the dome and we need a place for them to be able to go, we want them to be able to go outside, to be able to practice outside year round as weather permits, and to have it be lighted so that they can practice at any time of the day or evening that they need to be able to do it. So we feel like the outdoor turf field just gives us the ability to make sure that our student athletes are safe and that we have maximum flexibility, not just with the dome, but with some other areas that will be reliable year round. Soccer, softball, track complex. So a couple of things here. I'll start with the track. The outdoor track, the Messersmith track, is in a position where it needs to be not just resurfaced, but it needs to be replaced. There is a failure of the asphalt in the underlying surface underneath the track to where the entire track needs to be replaced before we can begin hosting meets outdoors. And we're actually in a position where we're supposed to be hosting the Missouri Valley Conference outdoor meet next spring. So this is another one of the priorities that we have, is to be able to replace that outdoor track. But then at the same time, once we've done our measurements, we found that the grass area inside the track is actually big enough to be able to hold a soccer field. And we'd love to be able to get our soccer program back on campus. So we want to look at structuring this so that within the track, that grass surface is where soccer would be able to come and compete. It would give us a better chance to be able to have our student athletes come and see soccer, as opposed to having to go to Waterloo to be able to see those games. And then we'd also like to get softball back on campus from being at Robinson Dresser to come and be in the area just south of the track, so that within that one area you would have soccer, softball, and track all together in one particular complex. Unidome renovation, this will be our biggest one on the entire list as far as a financial standpoint. There are any number of things that we want to do there. This is just a list of some of the possibilities. It's not an exhaustive list. We don't know that we're going to do everything there, and we don't know that there won't be some things that are not up there that we'll decide to do. But everything from replacing the bowl seating so that we have more comfortable and maybe better color coordinated seats within the dome, as well as renovating our premium seating areas and our press box. Let's see if we can do something about increasing our concession stands and updating those, as well as the concourse. Everyone complains about the lack of restrooms, so being able to address that. Everybody knows we also have an indoor track, which every year pretty much we are in a position to host the Missouri Valley Conference Indoor Track Championships. So that track has gotten worn and needs to be resurfaced. I don't know if it's talked about a lot, but one of the first things I noticed the first time I came to the Dome is that the Dome is a relatively sterile environment, and that there's not a lot of graphics. There's not a lot of pictures, not a lot of banners, not a lot that tells about the history of what's happened in that facility, either on the outside or the inside. So we'd like to put together a graphics package that would be able to show that. Increase the number of meeting rooms, possibly do some renovations to the Hall of Fame connector, coaches' locker rooms, as well as a number of other different areas. So that'll be the biggest and most expensive project that we would undertake. It's probably likely that this is something that we would do in phases, where phase one, we would knock off certain things, then phase two, then phase three. But that's something that's under consideration now as we look at someone to come in and help us look at what's feasible and how things can be programmed appropriately. And then finally, West Gym upgrades. A few things we want to be able to do, having a video board there. We need to get new practice mats. And then we'd like to be able to move our coaches' offices into a different location that currently has another set of coaches in it, but we can't make that move until a few other dominoes fall into play within the department. So that's facilities. And then finally, financial accountability. Increase annual revenue, maximize all available financial resources, and operate within our budget parameters. Goal one, raise $2 million in cash donations to the Panther Scholarship Club. I think everybody heard that we had a record-setting year this past year, raising $1.52 million. This year, our goal is $1.65 million. We want to get up to $2 million and above with cash donations to the Panther Scholarship Club. The money that comes into the PSC specifically goes to funding scholarships for student athletes. Our scholarship bill, the money that we pay to the university, exceeds about $4 million. So even at a $2 million number, there's a significant gap. But we know we need to make up that gap as quickly and as best as we know how. And that's why we want to make sure that our cash donations continue to go up. You can see that in 2013, we were at 1.1 million. 2017, we're at 1.5. So we need that number to continue to go up as far as donations. Goal two, increase the number of PSC members to 2,000. The most that we've had recently was in 2016 at 1,753. We want that number to be at 2,000 and beyond. So a lot of goals here related to PSC, including number for cash donations, the number of overall members, and then if you go back several slides, the idea that we want to have a PSC member in every county within the state of Iowa. Goal three, these next three goals all kind of relate to each other. increase the number of season tickets sold in each sport by 50% in all of our ticketed sports. Goal 4, increase the overall ticket revenue by 50%. And goal 5, increase the average attendance in each of the ticketed sports by 50%. So these go together in that, number 1, season ticket holders are the base of our attendance. We have to get more people investing in season tickets in all of these sports. Secondly, increasing overall ticket revenue. So whether we're doing specific promotions or doing single game tickets or doing a mini pack or some type of flex pass, we need to make sure that the money that we're bringing in for tickets continues to go up. But then finally, it's not good enough that you're selling more tickets or making more money off your ticket sales. We want more people coming to the games. So sometimes you'll show up for a basketball game in the McLeod Center. You may see that some of the seats are empty and assume that those seats haven't been sold, when truthfully those seats have been sold, but that person or those people or those groups of people haven't come to the game or are not at the game. So we want to have a strategy behind increasing the average attendance in each of our ticketed sports. Goal 6, explore and secure multiple new sources of revenue for the department's operating budget. We're always looking for new sources of revenue if we're going to achieve our goals, if we're going to do many of the things that are laid out in the plan. We know we need to have additional revenue that comes in and helps us. Now, part of that can be because we're doing some of the things that we've always done a little bit better. And then part of that is to come up with new sources of revenue to be able to make things possible for us. And then finally, annually operate within the parameters of our budget. That goes back to the general idea or the underlying idea behind financial accountability. We want to make sure that we're operating within the black with our budget. So that's our strategic plan draft. As I said, the feedback that you all will offer will certainly be important. So if you have questions or concerns or thoughts, we want to open it up now. If you have any questions, I'll grab my bottle of water here and we'll take your questions.
How are we doing on Title IX?
We are, in some cases, we're doing fine. In other cases, we need to make improvement. I would say with the laundry list, we're still evaluating that, but in many cases, we feel like we are where we need to be. But in areas of scholarship or participation, we need to make improvements in there. And so one of the things I should mention from a Title IX standpoint, specifically with participation, is that I mentioned the numbers and having them add up. There are actually 3 prongs, I guess they call it, in which you can meet your Title IX participation goal. One is the one that I talked about, whereas your percentage of undergraduate female students matches up with your student athletes. The second is to show that you have a history of, what do they call it, expanding opportunities for the underrepresented sex. So let's say that your percentages don't add up, but you have a history of adding sports, adding female sports, then you can meet the participation goal for Title IX based on offering over a fairly good history, expanded opportunities for female student athletes. The third prong is, if they call it, if you are accommodating the interests of people that live within your community. And so many people achieve that goal by saying, okay, we have the sports that we sponsor, but we've surveyed the community and we found that no students have any interest in any sports that we don't currently sponsor. So we feel like we've accommodated the interests of everybody within the community with the sports that we have. So we've met the participation goal on prong 3. So you can either meet a prong 1, prong 2, or prong 3. Prong 1, we feel like it's a gold standard where you want your numbers, your percentages to add up. And in our case, we need to get a higher level of female student athletes to be able to meet that prong. So we're looking at that, but we're also looking at some other opportunities to be able to meet that goal. And then we want our scholarship numbers to add up.
Are you looking at additional sports?
That's a possibility. We're not in a position to be able to say that that's something that we're going to do, but it's a possibility as we look at going forward. When you look at adding additional sports, then you have to have the revenue to be able to pay your coaches and have the facility and the operating revenue to be able to do that. So that's a financial commitment that you would need to make. But I think when you're looking at meeting this standard, you have to have everything on the table, including adding sports and or doing some other things to maybe meet one of the other prongs as well.
How far apart are you with male and female scholarships?
I don't have I'm not going to remember this off the top of my head, but the general standard is that you need to be within 3%. And so if you would, although the Office of Civil Rights will never, they will never give you a number and say, hey, this is, if you're within 3%, then you're fine. But generally speaking, within the industry, you need to be in that area. And I think the last numbers that I saw, we were somewhere closer to 7 or 8%. So we need to be able to shrink that gap.
And obviously, football is the elephant in the room with regard to that, and how do you put that into balance?
Yeah, from our standpoint, you have to look at the entire department. I know that some people will achieve this goal by cutting sports. That's not a position that we want to be in. And we obviously want to continue to have a good and strong football program. So we have to look at all opportunities, but we don't want to be in a position where we're doing anything to hurt our football program. We certainly don't want to be in a position where you're looking at or talking about eliminating sports to meet that standard. And so when you take those two things and you know that those are not things that you really want to consider, then it's about what can you do to expand opportunities in a fiscally responsible way. Sure. And just for you guys, if you have questions, if you can come and use the microphone, that'd be great, because the people who are listening on the live stream won't be able to hear you. But the question had to do with how we're doing regarding Title IX, and then there were follow-up questions about where our percentage stands and how does football factor into this. Other questions?
Yes, David. I read an article in the Register about the run with Loyola and the money that would be trickling down from the Valley and being equally distributed amongst the programs in the Valley. Is that money, can that be targeted towards facilities, or does that strictly have to go to scholarships? And they said not every conference distributes equally. Are we in the minority that way, or the majority of the conferences distribute equally?
I'll answer your second question first. We distribute evenly within the Missouri Valley Conference. So everyone gets an equal share in that regard. As far as the use of the money, we get to make the decision on how the money is ultimately used. So it's not pegged that it has to go toward facilities or it has to go toward scholarships. Ultimately, we can use it in whatever we feel is the best way to be able to move the department forward. Who's next? Who else has a question? I know it's a lot of information to take in. You've had a chance to only look at it for a short period of time, but I want to make sure that everybody feels like they have an opportunity to learn about this and ask any question that they want.
We're looking at a lot of money there. So how are we going to raise that? Is that going to be some naming rights, or, at times we give till it really hurts. So we got to have another source of revenue, I would think.
Right, and as I mentioned, if you're looking at something like facilities, then you have people that are willing to step up to help you to build the facilities that you want. Some things you're going to be able to do by getting your PSC numbers up. Some things you're able to do by selling more season tickets, getting more people to come to your games, come to your events. But then there are other times when you have a donor, a group of donors, a small group of donors who are willing to come together and get behind a particular project because they feel like it's important and they want to make the investment. So at UNI, as is the case with a number of other places, you have donors that give $25 a year. You have some that give $25,000 a year. You have some that are capable of being able to make 6- or 7-figure gifts. It becomes our responsibility to be able to put in front of them what we would like to do. What is our plan? What do we feel like is needed, and what do we feel will best put UNI athletics in a position to be able to compete in the foreseeable future? Because most of the time when you talk to a donor, they will tell you they'd like to see a plan. They'd like to see what you need. They'd like to see what you want to be able to do. And then you can come and talk to them about whether or not they're willing to fund it. So I can't stand here and tell you that everything on that list is something that we'll be able to do, or that we'll be able to do it all within a 5-year time period. But I can tell you that everything on there is important to us as a department. We want to attack everything that's on there. We want to make sure that we're talking to people, talking about the importance of it, and getting in front of people. The basic answer to your question is people. We have to get in front of people, talk to people about what our needs are, ask them to help within their area and within their capacity to be able to get things done. But then big picture standpoint, some of the things that we want to do to be more competitive or to provide resources, that becomes about everyday operating expenses. And that goes back to season tickets and PSC membership and some other things that'll be able to help us. So I kind of see it as two separate things. But the bottom line is we will have to have the Panther family look at this and decide that they want to get behind these things and be able to help them happen the way that we envision.
Well, let's come back to the naming rights. Obviously, this facility, a big donor. The Dome doesn't have any naming rights. Why does let's make it the John Deere Dome?
If you can make that happen, I will be happy to cash the check. But to your point, sure, why wouldn't we look at an opportunity like that? There are things like that as we have discussions about how we can raise money, how we can do more things, things along those lines get discussed because you are looking for opportunities for untapped resources that haven't been tapped at this point. And so if there's something that we can offer up to a donor that they feel will bring value to what they're trying to do and it will add resources to what we're trying to do, then it's our job to go out and try to find those partnerships and those opportunities. Thank you.
Have you or will you look at different conferences where maybe there are better financial opportunities?
My feeling is we feel like we're a great fit for the Missouri Valley Conference. And we want to do everything we can to strengthen the conference and make it the best that it can be. So from our standpoint, while you never control what happens into the future necessarily, our focus is really on being a Missouri Valley Conference member, making it a strong conference, being able to make sure that our teams compete in a significant way, get our men's basketball team into the tournament so we can earn the credits and earn the units that benefit all of us as well as the rest of the schools within the conference. So from our standpoint, we're not really looking at doing anything other than being a great member of the Missouri Valley Conference.
And are there any initiatives at the conference level to help the individual members? I mean, everybody has their own financial issues.
I would say the main thing that's happening at the conference level is that we are all trying to emphasize the importance of our teams being competitive. Specifically, when you look at a sport like men's basketball, which is where the revenue tends to come in. And so what can we do and what can we put into place so that we're not seen as a one-bid league, so that we can get 2 or 3 or 4 teams to come in so that those finances have a positive impact on all of us. So it's really about how can we help all of us be competitive, what things can we put into place, how can we encourage the teams that maybe traditionally haven't done as well to be able to make the improvements so that those teams are better. And that's what we spend a lot of time talking about on the conference level.
Thanks.
Other questions? All good questions so far, so please, if you have more, please feel free to come up.
I think everybody needs a visual, and I like the idea that the basketball multi-purpose building, that you had a picture of it, because that obviously helps to generate some interest in the money. And I was hoping to see that for the Dome tonight, because those things that you talked about, it needs greatly. But do you have an estimate for what that basketball multi-purpose building would cost?
Sure, the estimate is around $25 million for that facility. And I can go back because that's something that Phenomenal. Can we put it back on the slideshow mode? And if not, I can just talk through some of it. So 25 million. Football team meeting room, about 1.2, 1.3 is the estimate. McLeod upgrades, we don't have estimates on the video board of the alumni suite, but replacing the playing surface is about 125,000. Outdoor turf field, we've heard estimates anywhere between $1 and $2 million. We don't have anything on soccer or softball, but the replacement of the track is about 1.3 million. The dome renovation, we really don't have a number on that yet. It depends on what we ultimately decide to do, but we expect that number to be the biggest number that we ultimately have. And then the West Gym upgrades, the practice mats, you know, probably 50 to 60,000. The video board, we're trying to get an estimate on that. So depending on the project, you can have a large number or, you know, obviously not quite as large. So there's a lot of variance in that. And so when you're looking at raising money for it, then you're going to donors that have different capacities to be able to help you depending on the project that you're trying to get done. Any other questions? If not, I want to thank you all for making the time to be able to come out to hear the presentation, to be able to ask questions. As I said in the beginning, I encourage you that if you had a question that you didn't want to ask this evening, but you want to send me an email or come by and see me, or if you're watching the live stream and you weren't able to be here, feel free to send me an email, give us feedback. This is in a draft format for a reason. Because we want to spend the time to make sure that we talk with all of you, get your feedback, and then go to work with making any changes or adjustments we need to make so that by the time we introduce this for final consumption, that we really feel good about the product that we have. So thank you for your time and for being here this evening. We appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.